What's up, hooligans? Jay Hooligan here.
Hooligan V.
And welcome to another edition of our live lunch. And I guess I should turn that off.
And
It's like,
oh, is the music still going?
Music is still going.
It's a nice little atmosphere that we have going here.
Yes, quite. So today we're going to be talking about writing Act 1. So that's part of our filmmaking. Story. We're back on story. But before we do that, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Give us a like and share this video if you like what you hear. And also, you can become a hooligan yourself by going to our Patreon, patreon.com/HideHooliganFilms. And today's message is brought to you by The Wandering Guildsman. TheWanderingGuildsman.com/shop is where you can get your own RPG IRL shirts.
I have the same one at home, but it's black.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's pretty and black. Black and purple.
Okay, yes. It's still one of my favorite shirts. I love this thing. It's fantastic.
It is probably one of the favorites. I want a bag with it on it.
Oh, we should make some of those. We can. Like a backpack?
Yeah, backpack, dope bag, something.
Yeah. You know what? That might be on the list.
Diaper bag.
Diaper bag. Okay. Anything's a diaper bag if you try hard enough.
I'm like, I'm sure that a parent wants a necromancer on their diaper bag. Necromancer
great
got like a baby.
Yeah. Rose from the dead. That's super morbid. Never mind. I'm not gonna go into that.
Oh,
It's like,
that's mean.
that's you said it, not me.
I don't know what I was meaning.
Okay. So I don't know if you remember from was it last week or a couple weeks ago when we did one on the initial hook.
Ooh,
I think that was a couple weeks ago.
I think.
Right, so we did start out. It was a couple weeks ago. We started talking about writing your initial hook. And if you don't remember, your initial hook is essentially what draws your audience is the very first thing that they see, and why they would want to watch your film. Right, so writing that out, again, we made a designation between initial hook and an opening image, which a lot of people do use the term opening image, which is different than the actual initial hook, if you think about it, because I've seen two different styles of it where what we were talking about.
We were talking about Shadow and Bone.
Where their opening image was cool. It was inside the little veil, and you see the silhouette of a creature, and then like that was it. There was nothing else for an initial hook that actually builds you in. So we counted that as an opening image and an initial hook because they went right into the next part of Act 1, which we'll get into momentarily. But your initial hook, again, is something that's supposed to draw in your audiences to see why they want, like, you just sink your hooks in, like, ka-ta-ta. Right, so it's
or lasso it like a cowboy.
Yeah. Initial lasso, I don't think that works. It's like hooked. It's like you're drawing them in, like really
That's
pulling them.
fun though, because you're on a horse.
Reeling them in. Yes, I know. Anyways, but that's your initial hook versus your opening image. Your opening image is technically part of your initial hook, but I've always felt like when people describe their opening image, it's like, oh, it's the first thing you see. They sometimes imply it being an initial hook, but it's not always. That's usually just like, oh, I didn't say it's usually. It's many times just the first thing that you see. Okay? And I'm not talking about like credit rolls or anything like that. So again, the initial hook, what draws your audience is why the audience in, why should they even care to watch your story? And it's usually something action based. Okay, so action based is something like, oh, this is going to be cool, or this sets up not just action based, but it can set up the conflict. It doesn't have to show the antagonist, but it can show something that leads up to the conflict. But yeah, what's up?
I'm trying to think like romance and drama and romantic comedies, like what their initial hooks are usually.
Oh, I'm gonna try to remember
Right?
some of those, but
And
sorry.
for some reason, Twilight came to mind, and I was like, what was their initial hook? A deer being chased in the forest, right?
I don't know.
Lunchtime.
I don't know.
I think
because I didn't finish Twilight and erased
you
that
watched
from
the
my mind.
beginning then.
I watched the beginning. I watched
And you erased it
30
from
or
your memory.
45 minutes, and I was like, nope. There's no
But
nothing.
Anyways, I try to think about like dramas, romance, and like romantic comedies, or even comedies. Like, what are I'm so used to like action and horror. Like, okay, I know what those hooks are, right? But off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember like what are some like taking tag, right? Taking tag, for instance.
I'm trying to
I think
remember.
there was like their childhood, right?
Yeah, but that's that. I mean, technically, Tag was filmed like an action film anyway.
I mean,
That's how they did
that was a good movie. I want to watch the movie.
I'm trying to remember some of these. Oh man, it's been a long time since watched like say like a rom com or something like that. People aren't really making.
Well, think about like okay, so The Ugly Truth, right? It's one of my favorite rom coms. I'm trying to think like the beginning.
Yeah, the.
It was
very,
just an
very
opening
beginning.
though, I think. Do
No,
they
no,
have
it
an
was wasn't it the date? Catherine Heigl's date with that guy. And she's
Oh.
like, here's a list. You meet 9 out of 10 criteria. It's like, wait, what? And she's like, gone. Was that
Is
the
it
opening?
That's not the. Wait, there's the initial hook, and then there's norm. What is it? After?
Yeah, Normal Life.
Normal
That could have been part of her normal life. I'm trying to remember what it was. I know. That's the thing. They don't
Maybe it
stick
could be
out very
both?
much. Huh?
Could it be both?
What do you mean? Well, it could be
Like both the initial hook and.
No, normal world. Your normal. I mean, okay. So, again, just kind of going back to the initial hook. It's supposed to set up the tone and the feel for the rest of your film, and why your audiences need to watch this.
Oh, okay. I get what you're saying. So yeah, it could be that.
Yeah,
Because then it also has her normal life afterwards too, with work and how she is with people and
Yep.
stuff like that.
Exactly. So that's separate, but the whole idea is supposed to be it's the ugly truth about the dating world. So it makes sense that was her botched date. It sets up her character, and again, your initial hook does not necessarily need to have your protagonist or even your antagonist, your primary antagonist in it. It just needs to set up some sort of conflict, and again, sets up the conflict, sets up the tone of your story. And what it's going to be about. So, as in, say, like The Ugly Truth or something, if it started out on a date, it's all about relationships. So it's going to be a film about relationships, and how the awkwardness of Katherine Heigl's character, I forget her name on there, her character in there.
Did they do that in Deadpool? Did it start out on a date, or is it just him laying on the rug? I can't remember.
It was him.
Remember he was like, he thought this was gonna be like a love story.
That's technically the initial hook was that whole fight scene, which was also their proof of concept. Proof of concept turned proof of content. That's another one we'll do another time. But yes, that's essentially what what it was, because he starts out and he's drawing his little drawing on the highway, and he's like, oh hi,
Yeah.
and then goes into his breaking the fourth wall with his quips, and then just goes right into the action. So everything that Deadpool is supposed to be, boom, you get right there in the initial hook. You know exactly what this is going to be. In fact, that goes right into the
Yeah.
didn't it go right into the credits, the opening credits like that?
Yeah, the credits were in there too.
No, wait, I'm trying to remember. Was it the opening credits first? It was, and there was and then it went into his monologue.
No, I don't know. I think there was credits during the fight. That's why.
Mm-mm. It wasn't during the fight.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure it wasn't during the
thought it was
fight,
during the
because it
fight.
did the
It was
whole thing.
slow-mo and-
Yeah, it was slow mo, but I think that was just the opening credits. Again, opening credits is not an initial hook. All right, it could be stylized like Deadpool, but it doesn't necessarily make it an initial hook. So, I know we're recapping a lot on this. You could go watch that video, and again, it was from a couple weeks ago, but. Yeah, it doesn't. I'm pretty sure it started because it was like, what the heck is all these little things? It was slow mo, and then once it got to once it opened with Deadpool on the highway drawing, breaking the fourth wall, and then it went through that whole thing. He's like, maximum effort, dropped down, did his whole thing, and then there's that moment of like, oh, did I leave the stove on or something like that? And then all of a sudden, all those elements from the opening credits, which you just saw, were all like freeze framed, or not freeze framed. Were they freeze framed? They were slowed down, bullet time slowed down, so you can see a lot of the details of how it got to the opening credits and how that was relevant for it. That's how that went. Yeah, that's how that went. But yeah, that's your initial hook. You know everything that's supposed to be about. Again, it's easiest to see in like I said, action,
Right.
action horror type stuff.
Sorry, but weren't you were saying that for like the comedy and romance stuff, it's not as what were you just saying? You were
I was just saying it
it's
wasn't
not
as memorable
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm trying to remember the opening for. I mean, a lot of those rom-coms. I've seen a lot of rom-coms, but it's like for the ugly truth, or like something's
Oh,
got to
well,
give, or how's it a
here's
guy in
one.
10 days, or the holiday, or whatever.
Sweet Home Alabama, wasn't it like there were kids and the lightning storm and this and that, right? That the opening?
I'm trying to remember that one. That one was
Because that could have been like a interesting opening.
because again, I remember a lot more of the meat of the story versus, the actual. You good? Are you good?
There was something in here.
Mm.
I
Was
don't
it
like
not
that.
your drink? It's like.
I don't know.
Okay. But yeah, I remember more of the initial story than the initial hook for that. But anyways, yeah, like that's been a thing where your initial hook has to set up the tone. It has to set up a conflict of some sort. And again, it doesn't have to be the conflict. Think of like a disaster movie. Okay, disaster movies don't necessarily start on like world disaster. It's like setting up, like it's impending doom. Something happened, whether it's action based or not, that's going to drive the rest of the story. Not just the tone and the feel of it, but the conflict of what they're going to be encountering. Like I said, kind of going back to that Deadpool one, he's going after Francis. Right, that's his whole thing. Like,
¿Dónde
spell it. Yeah,
Jessica.
yeah, ¿dónde está la Francesca? But yeah, exactly. So, that's part of the main conflict. The entire conflict is he is going after this dude who messed him up, right? And that's all in the beginning. That shows you all in the initial hook, and people want to watch it, right? So, after the initial hook, I know we're going to. This is just this guys, and I wanted to mention this. I totally forgot to do this. When we're talking about structure, story structure, and everything, like writing is writing. Okay, there are so many different programs out there. There's so many different methods. There's not necessarily a right or wrong way to do it. What?
Storytelling, there's no right and wrong way of doing it.
Correct.
Writing, there is types
Correct.
of formatting.
Yes, but
Writing.
I'm not talking about just the process of writing, not the formatting of
okay.
it. Yes, like grammar, using proper grammar
Well,
and
it's like
spelling
script
and stuff like that. Script
or
format.
novel
Yes,
and stuff like that.
correct. When you're talking about storytelling and crafting your story, there's technically no right or wrong version or way to do it, and it's all about what works for you. What's best for you in your method. So, for instance, I work best. What was that? You good?
I'm just traumatized by what I drank.
Oh, still?
I don't know what it was, and I'm trying to ignore the feeling.
My goodness. All right. Well, I'm sorry that you feel that way. Anyways, I forget where I was going. Oh, yeah, there's no right or wrong way to write a story. However, there still has to be some sort of semblance of a story, which is essentially a structure, right? So, having that structure allows people to follow it easier rather than just a whole random, like, just different pathways for so many different stories that you have no idea why you should be interested in it. Okay, so this is why we focus on structure, is because there's so much creativity out there. Creativity, I always see it as like this big, massive ball of energy. And there's so many different ideas going back and forth that you can throw into this story, but you need to give it some sort of shape. It needs to be, sculpted in a way to actually be a semblance of a story. And I forget who used to say, it was one artist, sculptor. It's like, I don't, how do you sculpt these human figures? And it's like, I just chip away, all the stone, to get to where it's at. Anything else is unneeded and is thrown out.
Well, that's like that saying, writing is rewriting.
Yep, and that's another thing. Like I said, it's the editing process is gonna be over and over and over again. However,
sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Like, it sucks because, like, you have all these great ideas and you write them into your script and then you're looking through it again and you're rewriting, like, I don't need that. But
yes,
you want that, but I don't need that. And so you have to, but my thing is with that, is like, I take that piece and I save it for another story.
Save it for later, yeah. Save it for something else if you can use it for somewhere else.
Yeah.
And which is another method
When you
for
can
it.
use it for somewhere else.
Yes. And that's the thing is like again, everybody's method is different. It's absolutely about what is your preferred method. Like for myself, I need that structure. I actually need to know the rules of my universe. So whatever my universe is, that helps guide my story and my characters towards whatever conflict and how they deal with the conflict. What?
Must be nice to be so organized.
It's chaotic in my mind. Don't
I'm
give me
the-
this like organized stuff. I have to get that organization down in structure.
I'm the opposite though. I have to just write.
Yeah.
Write and then fix
So-
it after and then make sure it makes sense.
Yeah, see, and we work together because we have two different writing styles, but we work together because it balances out, right? But again, it's that whole just big massive ball of energy and ideas and creativity that needs to take form into something. So another thing that I came across was people actually write log lines. I guess the majority of people write log lines after their story's made.
Oh yeah.
I'm the exact opposite, and I know people that do it the opposite way too. I write my log line first. I come up with an idea. I have a spark of inspiration to have a story idea, and then I craft the log line. So then I know what direction it is. For me, when I craft a log line, anything that doesn't feed to that log line, I throw out, or I use for a different story. And it helps keep me on track for writing my story all the way through. So I know, does it feed to this? Is it just is it shoe leather? Is it something I could throw out, right? Because writing is rewriting,
Yeah.
and to me that's really really important because again, it's knowing what to write is one thing, knowing what not to write to take out is a completely other topic that we can get into.
But I think honestly it helps with structure because even though like how I was saying that I tend to just free write, doing that log line makes keeping that in mind as I'm free writing. Okay, this is where I need to go. It makes things a little bit more cleaner than me going. Okay, where was I going with this? What was I doing with this? What was the importance to this? You know.
Yeah, and free writing is different. I mean, there are free writing exercises where you start with a prompt and then just let it take off, which is fine, which is absolutely great for exercising your creativity. And I've said this before many times where creativity is like a muscle. If you don't exercise it, it's going to be weak.
You just reminded me that there's prompt books at Target that I wanted to get just to
Oh.
do them because I love like those little prompt things. Okay, give me this, give me that, and then make a story.
Yeah, which is fantastic. I love that there are exercises out there. So that's why when we started pulling our own sort of book together, which is very structure based, it's not the end all be all. People say you need structure. It's like you do, so you have some sort of semblance of story, but that structure can be essentially whatever you want it to be as long as it draws your audiences in. Because that's the thing. It may make, and you find this out a lot when you're writing, is it may make perfect sense in your mind, but when you try to convey that out to other people, it doesn't necessarily translate in that sort of way, which
Also
is why.
keeping audience attention.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about. Like not just audience attention, but comprehension.
True.
Is it? Can they comprehend what's going on? Is it entertaining enough? Right. This is why table reads with writers groups can be kind of hit or miss, and you usually got to take your criticism with a grain of salt. Is if you just do the same group, say every week, and they always give you the same feedback, but that's just one group. And now, if you go to many different groups or maybe have a reader read your script and everything to review that, they might have a much different idea and look and feedback for you, which goes, oh, this is actually really good. Different readers, this is why producers usually have more than one reader. They won't just have one reader like, hey, read the script, tell me if it's good, and give me a report on it. It's essentially what their analysis is. And from that point, it's like, if one person says it's good and one person says it's bad, now it's like, well, who do I go with? But that's what your analyses are for, right?
Yeah.
They'll go over their coverage, what they call script coverage that your readers do, and make a decision like, hey, well, here's all the good points, here's all the bad points. Now, if you get multiple readers, say if you got 4 or 5, and say 3 out of 5 of them say it's a good story, it might be something for a producer to go, oh, I want to produce it. So just that whole roundabout, you look like you wanted to say something.
Well, I'm just like, just don't. I mean, you can go to your friends, but branch out from just your friends, because then
Friends and family. Just move away from your friends and family.
any people who are trying to help you, because trying to help people with scripts, and they're like, yeah, I understand, and I got this, and then they don't got this.
Yeah, well, not just that, but moving away, just to your point, absolutely. Like, move away from your friends and family, because a lot of them are so used to being like, oh, we're close. I want to inspire you and encourage you to continue doing what you love to do, but with those mixtures of feelings, there's more of an attachment. It's more subjective, I guess you can say. Then you want objectivity. Somebody who's not attached to the story, first time. And that's another thing. Just a quick note on that. A lot of writers, especially amateur writers, when they get out there, there's this weird stigma that they don't want anybody to read their stuff. They don't want to discuss their ideas whatsoever because somebody's gonna steal it or anything like that. Like, you can't copyright ideas, right? Even in like patent offices, you actually have to have a design that you're patenting. You can't just be like, I want to patent the idea of this story, or that's essentially what like copyright. I want to copyright an idea for this story. No, you actually have to have. You can copyright an outline. You can copyright a treatment, right? Which is essentially a synopsis, and yeah, it's like you can't just copyright an idea. And guaranteed you, the ideas, the premises that are building these stories have been done to death. So you're saying like, oh, it's an original idea. It's that's more of an indie mentality for it, which there are a lot of, but the basic elements of story are still the same. What changes are the factors in it. What's the world that it's in? Who are your characters? Are your characters different versus, and that's kind of like the best way that I've heard the premise being explained is a what if scenario. Mm-hmm. What if an archaeology professor actually went on treasure hunts around the world? Indiana Jones, right? What if in a world of simulated reality, a godlike figure comes out to save humanity without them even knowing? The Matrix. Like, those are premises for like a prompt, if you think about it, for what your story is going to be about. Mm-hmm. Right, and this all ties into why when you're this is all story stuff, but kind of going back to my original point is there's no right or wrong way to write, but there still has to be some sort of structure for it. And people that say like, throw structure out, it's like,
there's always some structure.
There's always going to be some structure for it. But again, it just depends on your method.
What's funny is that some people say that, and then I realize when they're writing, they actually do follow a certain structure, and they don't realize it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, okay.
No structure, except mine. My structure. Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah. It's completely ridiculous. But it's that's the thing. It's like, no, it's mine because I don't do structure, but then they have structure. That's essentially how it works.
But it was my idea.
Yeah, but it was my idea. So what is this? You made this. I
made this.
It's yeah. There's so many different ways to go about writing, and it's whatever works best for you. That's why I've always tried to mention that anybody that we've mentored for writing story, it's like we ask a lot of questions. Well, what about this? What about that? What's the genre? Who's your protagonist? Who's your antagonist? What are your main characters? What type of story arcs are you doing? Right?
Poking
Do you have
holes
any ideas?
to make sure that it's sound.
Yeah.
That you have all these questions. That you have all these questions that answered, right? Because also when it comes down to pitching, and as a producer, when you go in to go take your story to go pitch it, and they're asking you all these questions, you can't answer them.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're gonna know that your story isn't sound, and they can't sell that.
Yep.
So
the other way beside that is actually going back to the whole factor of watching a film, right? Same sort of idea when reading a script. People don't realize this, but they go into it going like when people are pitching ideas. It just happened in the Logline Wednesday group a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. People
tend to want to over-explain. You as a creator...
I get that.
Yeah, you as a creator, it's like, well, I don't know why you have this and this. Your audience is just based off of a logline, not even a story. Here's my premise. Here's my logline. What's it about? Etc. Etc. Which a logline, if you don't know what a logline is, it's essentially a one or two sentences, very short description of what your film and story is going to be about. It conveys essentially who the protagonist is, who the antagonist is, or at least the conflict, and what world they're in. Doesn't have to be specific names, but like say, was it New York City cop? That's a protagonist. That's who the story is about. Takes on the drug cartel. In Miami, Florida, for some reason. Yeah,
like character trait.
It's not necessarily a character trait. I like to add character traits just so you understand like this is the type of protagonist without having to say the name, because it's kind of like a faux pas. Mm-hmm. When you're writing a logline, you don't want to tell them the names of this person.
I like that though, because you have me doing that now, and it helps me remember this is that character. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Unless you're doing specific it's like off of it's not even necessarily biopics, not just biopics. If you're doing a biopic, obviously it has to be about somebody's life. No. It's even derivative stories off of that, like fictional stories where it's like not a biopic, but you're using you're following somebody else's story.
What is it? One Lady Gaga, The Star is Lost or something.
Star is Born.
Star is Born.
Star is Lost.
I don't remember it.
Anyways, but yeah, all those things all kind of tie together into what we're talking about and why it gets into writing your Act 1. But just again, reiterating my point, there's no right or wrong way to go about writing. Whether you need structure at the very beginning like I do. Again, I write my logline first. That gives me a through line to what story I'm writing, so I'm not writing this story plus this story plus this story plus this story and then try to find which way it actually works, which works for some people. Mm-hmm. I don't work that way personally. That's my personal preference. So being able to do that, not just the logline, but creating the rules of the universe, like whenever I world build or whenever I do my outlines, before I even touch a story starting it, I need to know who my characters are, at least the majority of my main characters. I need to know what world they're in. I need to know, is it a fantasy world? Is it real life? Are there still certain rules of this universe that they adhere to, whether it be magic, whether it be creatures, whether it be, whatever. All that pertains to, like, I'm writing martial arts homage to like the 70s kung fu movies right now, and it's everything for that. It's like, here's all my character names. These are my main characters. This is the world that they live in. Here's the style of martial arts they do. That way it's like, oh, why is this important? Because each one of those is going to dictate how they all intertwine together. That's for me.
Again. The most I've ever done was webbing. And I started with a character, I had other characters, and then I added incidences that happen between the characters, and then I just make a whole web on a notebook, and it's just all chaotic, but it makes sense to me. So
yeah, absolutely. So again, there's no right or wrong way to write, man. So kind of going all this whole roundabout way. I think it took like 10-15 minutes on that, but that's all right, because it's really important to understand, like, hey, you're gonna write. Because I've seen groups where like, nah, all these guys are strict. They don't know what they're talking about. Just do all this like free write stuff. It's like, but you're still following a relative structure. It still needs to.
And if you're understanding this, then that leads you into, from your hook, it leads you into your normal life, right?
Correct, and that's what we're going to be talking about. But it just pertaining to that point, where it's like, I've seen some of these writing groups that they're like, yeah, just throw structure out. You don't need it. You don't need to understand. McHugh's an idiot, and it's like, oh, this is McHugh, save a cat. No, like they're all dumb. Like, are you really, dude? Get out. You're.
Who has the awards?
Yeah, what clothesman, like, you made this? I made this. Like, yeah, those are just the classical parts of understanding story structure, so then you could actually write something, okay? And anybody that's just like, oh, throw it out, it's like, no, that's all just understanding. Especially what, like, Robert McKee does with his, with story and dialogue, he breaks it down to a point, like, it's all minute, to the very beat, where we call conversational beats, where... that's our system, where it's like you're just going back literally line for line, power struggle, and he breaks that down in his own method for that. And it's important for people to understand that if, say, a scene doesn't work, that's the whole reason for it. He adds structure to it when your creativity is so jumbled up and you don't understand why it's just not making sense. He breaks it down to like sentence, or what does this person say? What does that person say? Two different beats. Okay,
What's
that's
the conflict
structure.
in the scene?
Yeah, what's the conflict in the scene? What's the power struggle? But that's really important to understand. And people say, "Oh, throw it out. You don't need it. It's garbage." It's like that's ridiculously, egotistical for them to say, and just shows a complete lack of understanding to actually fulfilling like a story, right? That's not everybody. Obviously, that's not everybody, but adding structure to creativity, I think that's what drew me into filmmaking and storytelling to begin with. Is there's a technical side and there's a creative side, and I don't know if I've ever mentioned that in here, but it's like that's why I love film. Is it's both technical and creative, and it's the melding of the two, which is why it's so difficult. If it were so easy to do, like a lot of the these critics think, oh, I could do this, it's fun, and then they don't ever execute because they're unknown, and they don't ever do well because it's all just ego talk. That's all it is.
Is that like the whole manager thing that we talked about? Managers and techs, they're like, oh, I can do it.
People managers and techs that think they can own a business because they're like, oh, I can do this better than my boss, not realizing that there's so much more that's involved that actually builds on that, right? But yeah, that's a whole other side to it. It's more egotistical than it is actual understanding for what's going on, with story. Anyway, the people that like to throw that stuff out, to me, it's ridiculous. You are still going to need it, but the filmmaking, storytelling, great meld between technical and creative. I mean, you still got to know grammar, you still got to know spelling, you still got to do those things, or they will get thrown out. We've literally seen pitches thrown at us where it's like, here's just a jumbling of thoughts, not any sort of structure, no logline, no genre, just here's my idea, and here's just a jumbling of thoughts of this happens and this happens, this happens. It's essentially but the chocolate. It's like I don't care about the chocolate. No, get it out. Don't want to talk about it. Don't want to hear about it. It's gone, right? And you lose your audience that way. You don't want that to happen. You also don't want to over-explain, but the chocolate is so important, guys.
Then you get people producers who just get up and walk out.
Yep, seen that happen.
Saying.
Yep. All right, so getting right back into this, like you were talking about, trying to bring me back, because that's there's a lot of ranting that goes on here, because it's like there's so much of this where people just go off on saying it's all garbage. It's like it's not. It's just knowledge. What you do with the knowledge. Okay, that's one of my saying. All right, knowledge isn't power. All right, knowledge is the fuel to make actions powerful. So having that knowledge, right, will help guide you into a way to make your actions powerful. So what you do with that knowledge is what is powerful, right? You could be sitting on, say like, oh yeah, I know how to write the best story in the world, and could make trillions of dollars instead of millions and billions. Yeah, I just choose not to do anything with it. That's ridiculous. That is absolutely, completely ridiculous for people to try to say, and to believe in themselves. But even if they did have that, they didn't do anything with it.
Show me, don't tell.
Yeah, show me, don't tell. That's a big role for the artistic medium of filmmaking. Show, don't tell. In writing, you do have to show in a way of your descriptions, but not have like novel-style paragraphs for what's going on.
Which you're still showing.
Which is block text. It's called block text.
In novel-like stuff. But even in, take normal life, right? You show, don't tell some of the things that the character does, right? Whether it be a quirk or something that...
Okay, yeah, so that's getting into the next section. So after initial hook, just going right into... I know you're trying to keep you on track, thank you. After initial hook, the other sections or other elements of Act 1, all right? And again, some people start writing from your midpoint. Some people write from the conclusion. I used to do that. I used to work from my conclusion backwards and try to find the beginning from that. Some people write from the midpoint, because the midpoint is essentially a complete 180 of a mentality shift from your protagonist, where everything changes from there, right? When you go into Act 1, right, after your initial hook of hooking your audience in, normal life, which is the next section for it, establishes what the normal life is of your protagonist. That could be any world that you want it to be in. It could be based in reality. It could be it'd be fantasy. I mean, technically, it's all fiction, for the most part. But you're literally establishing, like I said, yeah, any quirks that they have, anything that they're kind of stuck in. I
think
guess
like,
you can kind of say.
What is it? The dentist. It's not the invention of lying. It's something else. The dentist one. Or he's a
That
dentist?
wasn't
Same
invention
guy.
lying. Yeah, it's Ricky Gervais. You're talking. Oh man,
Where
it's the
he's
one
got,
where
like,
he
OCD
dies.
or
No,
something?
he dies for a little bit. No, he dies for a little bit and comes back. Oh my gosh, that's gonna bug me.
But you know how like he's very like the way that the character is in the beginning, when in the opening scene, he's like he's fixing this. This has got to be this way. This is what he does in the morning for breakfast. This is what he does, to get cleaned up, right? And then he do that. He has like a certain system.
No, you're talking about. It's a Will Ferrell movie, and it's Stranger Than Fiction. You're talking about Stranger Than Fiction, and the
thought that
one
was
you're
him.
you're talking about with him as a dentist. It was Ghost Town.
I thought it was that one. Anyways,
Was he a dentist?
was that? I remember him being a dentist, and he was dead or something like that.
I'm trying to remember if he was a dentist. I'm pretty sure he was a dentist in this one. And I think it's just because I keep... Oh, yeah, he's a dentist in Ghost Town. But yeah, you're talking about...
It's where Will Ferrell?
Will Ferrell is... in Stranger Than Fiction, where it's like he literally counts how many brush strokes that he has for brushing his teeth. Which is part of his quirk. Right? And I'm trying to remember, because I think that was actually their initial hook, because it established like he heard the writer's voice and like, what the hell? Who's narrating my life? I hear this thing, and that it's a great movie. Actually, a lot of those movies, The Invention of Lying, Ghost Town, and even Stranger Than Fiction, which is not a Ricky Gervais movie, all great movies, all great stories. But again, it establishes any quirks, any flaws, any hidden desires they allude to. They don't necessarily have to tell you what they are.
Mm-hmm.
But this is all established in your normal world. Okay, the normal life. Normal life is, again, it's not necessarily normal per se, like it's just everyday life. It's what's normal to your protagonist. Okay, so what is the normal life your protagonist goes through? Which usually there's some sort of unfulfillment, right? There's something that's unfulfilled in their life that they have to solve, which drives them into your second act, which is the majority of your story. But we're talking mostly on for Act 1. Now, your Act 1, again, it's essentially establishment of, it hooks your audience, establishes a normal life, who your protagonist is. Who your protagonist in normal life is essentially why your audience should care about this character. Here's a conflict in your initial hook. Yeah, that's interesting. Who are we going to follow? Normal life, protagonist. Whether if you didn't introduce your protagonist in your initial hook, you're introducing your protagonist in your normal life, who they will be following. Now, protagonist doesn't mean hero, even though a lot of people use that synonymously. It's not the same, because they're anti-heroes or they're different art plots that they have. But essentially, you're taking your protagonist is central person or people, a group of people. If you're doing, say, a multi-plot, or just it's essentially they all have a similar goal. They have their own personal desires, but their same goal, like their primary goal, is the same. Okay, I'm trying to think of multi-plots like
multiple.
yeah, I'm trying to think of like multi-plots where Avengers. Even though each one of the characters, the Avengers, has their own storyline and conflicts and personal desires, they're all still trying to go after, Avengers that was Loki. They're trying to go after Loki with the Tesseract. That's the main antagonist. Whether it's there's a bigger world that they left an open-ended world, so it's actually Thanos. Whatever. That's besides the point. This incident for Avengers was this ragtag group of superheroes that don't have anything in common are going after Loki with the Tesseract. Okay? That right there, multiple characters, all the same goal for this story: defeat Loki, get the Tesseract back. Right? Because he's trying to take over the world. Right? That's a prime example. It's a great example for that, for multiple characters versus like a single character that you're following, whether it be a rom-com or whatever. Like,
I keep thinking about Lost Boys, like thinking about how like that opening was, and it's like what it's Corey, what's his name? Because both Corys are in there.
Yeah, Corey Haim and
Corey Haim
Feldman.
is the brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's the protagonist, right?
Yep.
As much as you don't see as much of him. You don't see as much of him.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, he's through a lot of it, and it's
I'm trying to remember it.
It's him and his brother.
I remember when they get there, and you see him at the comic book shop and stuff like that, and it's he's just trying to get used to normal life because it's his new life, right?
Yep.
So
why should we care about them?
Yeah.
Why should we care about them?
Yeah.
So essentially, your normal life after your initial hook of pulling people in, you have to establish like, what is this? Well, it might be a new world for them too, like you're saying for Lost Boys, where he's literally moved. Right? They just moved. You know who did that too? Karate Kid.
Karate Kid. Oh, that's right.
They moved. Oh, we're in a new place. Oh man, this place sucks. Like that's another part of establishing your normal world. This is the quirks that now they're in an uncomfortable position. This is why they care. It's like, hey, people that have uprooted from their home and they've moved to this whole other place, they can relate, right? So that's all in the normal world. Mm-hmm. How do you exit your Act 1? So that gets into what we usually call an inciting incident. Now, there are people that or systems that say they call your inciting incident your 17-minute mark, or your 17-minute, where something happens at the 17-minute mark in a feature film, where it's essentially your inciting incident, something that causes them to change or make a decision outside of that. Now, for my this is oh no, I got it.
I was like, is that the old one?
It's not the old one because it hasn't been here. So in our system, we call that a crossroad. Essentially, you're presenting an incident where your protagonists or protagonists, right, which all have a relatively similar goal, is offered a choice. They can either go back to their normal life and be miserable, or just be unhappy or whatever, unfulfilled in some sort of way. Or they can go into this new, unfamiliar territory.
Kill some vampires.
That's essentially what it is. Yeah, it's or unfamiliar territory, and that's the thing is a lot of times it may feel like your protagonist is not like in control of that, but technically they are.
They still make that choice.
So yes, this is part of our system where it's like there's a difference between the inciting incident and something we call passing the threshold, right? I've heard it also in Save the Cat, they call it breaking into. We call it passing the threshold because for passing the threshold into the hell world, this is the point of no return. Mm-hmm. The inciting incident happens, an incident happens to cause them to make a choice. Now, in certain stories, and this is why I like our system, is we differentiate between that crossroad, that decision that's being made of like here, but you don't actually go into Act 2 until they actually make the decision, an active choice to follow through.
Yeah, because they could struggle with that decision at the crossroads. Like,
in the normal life.
What am I doing?
Yep, absolutely. And on the flip side of that decision could be in an instant. Mm-hmm. So your inciting incident, which is your crossroad, and your passing the threshold may happen all at the same time. Think of I'm trying to think of like action films. Say, what's a good one? I'm trying to remember. For some reason, I'm remembering like
I don't know.
No. I'm trying to. It's like there's all these different stories going through my head right now. But it's essentially like if was it True Lies?
True Lies with Arnold and
Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis. I'm trying to remember the inciting incident, but I don't know if it was.
I don't remember that very well.
But it's been a long time since I've seen that movie. But essentially, it's like I'll create a scenario for you. An ex-military, or an ex-secret operative is out with his family, and his daughter gets kidnapped. I think that's why I was thinking True Lies.
Taken?
It's not. No, Taken. She was out, and then he finds out. He finds out later that that's happening.
Right.
So he's out with his family, and in the middle of it, there's a bank robbery, and in the middle of that, they kidnap the guy's daughter, and he makes that quick decision of, boom, I gotta go back, I gotta go after her, but they get away, right? Now he's thrown into this whole different world of unfamiliar. He doesn't know who they are. He doesn't know what they're motivated at. He doesn't know why they took his daughter, whether it was just she was, a victim nearby and they needed a hostage. Maybe he was targeted. You don't know, right? All those sort of things, but all that decision could have been like, here's my crossroad, my inciting incident. This thing happened, and I have to make a decision, split decision, especially for if he's a father. I'm just going after my kid. He's crossing into that threshold right from the beginning.
But see, that's a different type of character, because I was thinking that too, like split decision, right? You
Mm-hmm.
got somebody who's impulsive make a split decision.
Yep.
You got somebody who, again, he has that background of like, oh, I need to make this like, what was he like or is he a cop, a detective?
Who?
I forget, Arnold.
Oh, for True Lies?
For
No,
True
he's
Lies?
he's a secret operative. I forget
Yeah,
what
so he had that
organization.
training, like, I need to make this quick decision.
I don't think he did that in that film, but I'm just saying, I was thinking about it because it was like...
Well, thinking about it, right? Two different characters, right? One who's had that training, who is like either a cop or whatever, someone who's had that training to make split decisions because of their field that they've been in, versus somebody who's impulsive.
Yep.
Different type of character traits.
Absolutely. So again, that's just knowing your characters, right? But when you get into that again, like that's all you're deciding against it. Your crossroad. They have to be offered that sort of decision, because again, he could just go back to if he was unsure of himself, like, oh no, there's this big. Yes, maybe he wasn't a military operative. Maybe he's just like an everyday clerk, or something. And then it's like something happened. They're missing. Should I do something? I should call the police. Let the police handle it. No. Police aren't doing anything. Again, you can draw that out depending on the story that you have, the characters that you have, to really create that interest. But again, that's all. It's not until they actually make that active choice. They must make that active choice to do something. All right. Even in flat arcs, they're deciding to do something. So Indiana Jones is one of the my favorite flat arc characters, and. When people say like, oh, there's no character arc, it's like, flat arc is a type of character arc where the world changes around them. So Indiana Jones is a prime character. He doesn't necessarily learn anything, or his character arc is not that impactful to the story. And people can say like, oh, like maybe The Last Crusade, or even Temple of not Temple of Doom, Raiders of the Lost Ark, where it's like he didn't believe in all this stuff, and then now he believes. It's not that big of a deal for him, because he's still an archaeologist, he's still treasure hunting, he's still going after stuff, and the world changes around him because of his treasure hunting.
I'm trying to think like with his dad. I thought he changed a little bit, right?
Yeah. Again,
because he had that relationship with his dad where it was just kind of like tension, and then he started coming around. I mean, was it really him or was it dad that came around? I can't remember.
No, he went after his dad because his dad went missing.
No, I meant like for character. Like, did his character come around to, like, being more okay with his dad? Because I know they had tension to begin with.
So again, all right, you're talking about The Last Crusade. Last Crusade, I want to say he actually did have a positive change arc where it was more about the faith, like his lack of faith, to him actually having faith at the end. Which,
but his dad represented faith, though,
yeah,
right?
his dad represented that from Last Crusade. So again, but Indiana Jones as a whole, he's a flat arc character for the most part, especially in Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom, right? And I'm not even talking about the later films after Last Crusade.
What later films? I'm not talking. I erased them from memory.
Yeah, I erased those from my memory too. But essentially, a flat arc character is one that the world changes around them, not necessarily that they change themselves. Even if there are minute changes that do happen for them, that's the other part to the structure. Anyways, but there still has to be some sort of active choice that they make to go do something, right? Even for flat arc characters, Lara Croft is another one. Same sort of idea where she's a treasure hunter, right? Something happens, her dad's been missing, and then she gets this thing from her dad, and all of a sudden there's this whole mystery. She decides to follow that mystery, or down the rabbit hole. That's another great analogy for it. She goes down the rabbit hole, chooses to go down that rabbit hole, and then finds this whole other thing and finds out what happens to her dad, right? In the context of the story. So all that stuff, that's another one. Alice and the White Rabbit. She's curious. She sees this white rabbit. That's weird. She has a choice to go, well, I'm just going back to my tea and crumpets and my horrible life that I don't like with all this control, or I could follow the White Rabbit. They alluded to that, or they didn't actually allude to that. They actually flat out said it in The Matrix. Follow White Rabbit. Oh, yeah, sure. His whole thing, you literally see that decision in that inciting incident. The inciting incident is, who's on my computer? How did you do that? I don't know who's doing this, right? Follow the White Rabbit. Knock, knock. Whoa, what the hell? Hey, man, you should make it out. Unplug, unwind. He's like, no. And then he sees the White Rabbit, and he's like, you know what? Choice. Active choice. Yeah. That's all it was. It was literally that. It was literally... you get to see that happen. The choice, the decision between the two.
You know what movie you reminded me of? I can never remember the name. Is the one with the game, and she has that thing when she plugs in to the spine.
Oh,
I like that movie.
Equilibrium. Oh my goodness, it's with Jude Law, and oh my.
Because that was really good.
Sorry,
I remember like the hook was in the game, right?
Oh man,
I'm trying to remember how the hook was.
I have to look exactly. Okay, this always bugs me because of just if I don't know the movie name, but I know what the movie is.
Actress looks very familiar, and I can't remember what her name was.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I have to. This is what I do all the time. What the heck was that movie? There's so many freaking movies that I've seen.
That was a good movie. It's because you reminded me of like Matrix stuff, and I was like, oh, the game, and then I was like, oh, this movie, you know, because that creepy game controller thing.
Yeah,
very fleshy. I don't know how.
Well, that was a look for that, and
I know.
I really like the look that they did for that.
Yeah, the look was cool.
Existence is what it was. Existence.
Oh.
Yeah, and that was Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Okay.
It was Jude Law and Jennifer Jason Leigh. Another great film we did on that, and the way that they decided to film that was very much like they try to follow a programmer, or not just program, like the evolution of gaming, right? Mm-hmm. So language was very stinted, in the beginning, or at least it was like purposely done a certain way, and then it evolved over time throughout the film, which was just fantastic, to try to see. Anyway, it's like, so little things like that always bug me. I'm like, what's the name of that movie? I know what movie it is. I just don't. It's just eluding me.
But that was a good hook. That, and then I was thinking Memento too, because he doesn't remember, and then he has to make that choice. Am I gonna follow all these signs that I'm leaving?
Yep.
Or that's being left for me.
So talking about structure for like Memento is a great way to talk about structure, because it's literally done where it's like you're seeing the end of in linear time. You're starting from, I guess it's this way for you guys, in linear time from beginning to end. It's starting at the end, showing you a chunk, and then going back and back and back. But the climax of the story is still at the beginning, and it's just kind of figuring this mystery out going backwards. That's another
writers?
Great. Yeah, fantastic, great job with that. But that goes back to, like I said, just having that sort of structure where even if it's non-linear, and it does technically go backwards, the story in itself has a build to that climax of what happened for it. Now, they could have decided to throw this into in linear time. It wouldn't have been as impactful, I don't think.
No.
Right? Because if you started with, I guess that's spoiler. Like,
they jumbled.
If you started with what happened in the end to figure out what drove all these different things in here, that would essentially be your inciting incident. They flip-flopped that and went, nope, this is your climax of the story, because it all started,
they jumbled it because his memory was also jumbled.
Correct.
And it was just him trying to piece it together. And even as an audience, you're like, well, who is it? Or what's going on?
Who done it?
Yeah.
Anyways, so that's essentially all the elements for Act 1. You got your initial hook. You've got your normal life. Establish your character. Your initial hook. Draw your audiences. Why should they be watching your film? Why should they even care about your story? Okay? Your normal life. Who are we following? Why should we even care about them? Is there something interesting about them? Are they an everyday, Joe or Jill? What is interesting about them to show why they are flawed and they're not, there's something missing in their life, right? Why do they want to get out? Why do they choose to get out of their normal routine? Whether they be something external happens to them, or something in their community, or to their love,
something.
or they want to fulfill something, like they get maybe offered a job, their dream job, but it's with contingency, whatever that may be, your inciting incident, your crossroad, right? They have to be offered, in the middle of their normal life, they have to be offered a crossroad, right? To where they get to choose. That's the inciting incident. Crossroad is presented. I don't know which way do I need to go. I can go back to my normal life, or I can go into what we call the hell world, which is all of your act 2, the unfamiliar. I call it the hell world, doesn't necessarily need to be hell, but we call it the hell world because it's like the upside down, right? It's everything that's unfamiliar, it's chaotic, it's all the things that is typically against, disorients your protagonist for. But yeah. And then they have to make, the last part of that is they have to make an active choice of passing the threshold into your Act 2, right? That's what drives them into the hell world. That's literally Alice following the White Rabbit, okay? And this is, you brought up Twilight.
That was at the beginning of
I understand that. I say no.
Let it die.
No, it's going to die like the story died with that. This is why my problem, again, there's nothing against the actress, or the actors in there that, they've done great films, outside of that. Like Robert Pattinson has done a lot of great films. Nothing against that. And I think that was his breakout film, was Twilight. That was his breakout film for it. So, again, it got him where he needed to be with that. But just the storytelling for that, and a lot of people have complained about the books too about that, like the semblance of it. Right? Bella's character isn't necessarily offered anything. She doesn't make any active choices. She
go into her world.
Yep, she's not a flat art character. She's almost a no art character.
But if she moves, and it wasn't her choice to move.
Yeah.
Which I get could add to conflict, but she didn't even try. No,
she didn't even try.
She did. I don't remember the video.
From what I remember, it was like she did absolutely nothing. Everything happened around her. Oh, I just happened upon it. Oh, okay. Oh, do whatever. You can make all my decisions for me, and it's one of the most uninteresting characters. Again, it's not to say anything about Kristen Stewart. Whether you like her,
character.
Yeah, the character.
The story.
Whether you like Kristen Stewart or not, that's your own personal opinion. But just the character, for the story. You're right. For that, it was like she's what we call a cork in the ocean. Things happen to her and then just takes her along with it. She's not making any decisions. She's not, she's not making any decisions. She's not making, she's, if anything, she should have been a supporting character. Right? Whether you can make the argument of, but she's the one that discovered all this and you're following her. Regardless of that, she made no active choices. Like Indiana Jones, flat art character, like I said, makes choices all the dang time. All the time.
Like the guy with the swords and he's got a gun?
Yeah, that was an interesting story. Because he was actually sick. He was deathly sick on that. He was like almost puking. And from that, and he's just like, we're supposed to do this whole fight scene, and it was just like, yeah, iconic. Definitely iconic. Anyway, besides from all that, that's going into writing your Act 1. But those are the elements for Act 1, and which is roughly about a quarter of your script. Or if you start, doesn't matter whether you're writing a feature, doesn't matter if you're writing an episodic. The only time where you may want to consider not adding an Act 1 is when you're writing short films. You don't necessarily need to start that and have a full Act 1 to establish all these things. You can literally start a short film in any part of your film in an overall story arc. Okay, which is why short films are fun to do. Okay, you can literally do a scene anywhere inside a feature-length film or story arc, and that could be a short film. Anyways, that's our time. So, thanks for joining us for another live lunch. Hopefully, you guys got something out of this. This is something that we spent a lot of time, like almost 2.5, 3 years, I think. It's like just on story structure alone, just to understand story, to understand these elements that make story great. And what drives people to go see them, so then they understand its comprehension and entertainment, right? Without having to explain. Think of it, whenever you're writing your scripts and you're making your films, make them in a way where, You don't ever have to explain anything to justify why you did something. Just do the film. Just do the script. Let it speak for itself. Show, don't tell.
Right and
Right?
rewrite.
Yeah, because you can't go to every single audience member like, hey guys, this is why I did this one. No. You didn't like that part, but I did it because of this. You don't get that choice. Yeah, you could say there's post interviews. That's not the point. Any random audience member can come and see your film and make their own decision about it. Anyways, again, hopefully you guys liked this segment for it. This is Storytelling 101 and writing your first act. Those are the elements that go in your first act. If you got any comments, send them down below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Like, share this. Excuse me. Like and share. You can also, again, support us by becoming a hooligan at patreon.com/hidehooliganfilms, which I think we might even be doing more of the segments for our breakdown for our own structures on storytelling. Might
Actually,
save the
on
rest
the
of them.
Patreon, the actual breakdowns
Yeah.
of each section.
Oh yeah. We actually have our own templates already made out for that. So, but yeah, and you can also buy one of our RPG IRL shirts at thewonderkillspin.com/shop. Thanks again for joining us, guys, and I guess we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.